If you've ever felt like you had to be the responsible one from the moment you were born, if failure has always felt like something to fear rather than something to learn from, your Chiron placement might explain why. And today we're going to break down Chiron in Capricorn, the wound of authority, the fear of failure, and how this placement can become one of the most powerful sources of mastery, I'd say, in the entire zodiac sign. So stick around, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand not just what this placement means, but how to actually work with it instead of against it. So welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, we go deep into the parts of astrology that don't get talked about enough, and Chiron is one of them. While most people know their sun, moon, and rising, very few know their Chiron sign, but this placement can explain some of your deepest insecurities and your greatest gifts. So let's start with the basics. Chiron is not a planet. It is a small celestial body, a minor planet that was discovered in 1977. It was orbiting between Saturn and Uranus, and symbolically that placement matters because Chiron sits between structure and rebellion, between tradition and transformation. And in mythology, Chiron was a centaur. It was half human, half horse, known as a brilliant healer and a teacher and a mentor. But there was a catch. Chiron was wounded by a poisoned arrow, a wound that never healed, even though he could heal everybody else. And that's where the term wounded healer comes from. And it's the key to understanding Chiron in astrology. So whenever Chiron sits, or wherever Chiron sits in your chart, that's where you carry the deepest, often lifelong wound, but it's also where you have the potential to become a healer or a teacher for others, precisely because you understand that pain very intimately. So now let's bring in Capricorn. So Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, the planet of structure and discipline and responsibility and authority and time. So when Chiron sits in Capricorn, the wound is centered around achievement and competence and authority. And people with this placement often grew up feeling like they had to earn love or respect through performance. And maybe you had a parent who was emotionally distant or overly critical, or who modeled that vulnerability, and that was like a weakness in itself. So maybe you had to grow up fast, taking on responsibility at a very young age and becoming the reliable one, the adult in the room before you were ready. And so the result of that is you have this deep, often unconscious belief that you are only as valuable as what you produce. So rest could feel like laziness, mistakes can feel catastrophic, and asking for help can feel almost impossible because somewhere along the way you learned that needing support wasn't really safe. And this is also generationally significant because Chiron was in Capricorn from around 1988 to 1999, meaning an entire cohort carries this wound collectively. And that generation often grew up amidst economic instability, shifting family structures, or pressure to be self-sufficient pretty early, which shows up individually as this fear of, I'm not achieving, I'm not worthy. So how do we make this practical? Well, Chiron and Capricorn can show up as chronic overworking, or trying or tying your entire self-worth to your career, or a fear of being seen as incompetent, so you avoid trying new things unless you're already good at them. Discomfort with authority figures, or alternatively becoming a rigid authority figure yourself. Difficulty delegating because if I don't do it, it won't be done right, or a tendency to mask emotional pain with productivity. Sound familiar? And if so, this is not a broken part of you. You're just carrying a very old wound that's asking to be acknowledged rather than buried under another to-do list. So where it gets really powerful is that Chiron placements also contain this, or they always do contain this paradox. You know, the wound and the gift live in the same place. So people with Chiron and Capricorn often become incredible mentors and leaders and builders precisely because they've had to learn discipline and resilience the hard way. And once this placement starts to heal, these individuals often become the person that others would turn to for that grounded practical wisdom. And they build real structures like businesses and institutions and systems that actually last because they understand both the cost of poor foundation and the value of solid ones. And the healing doesn't mean that the drive disappears. It just means that the fear driving does. So success stories being about proving your worth, and it starts being an authentic expression of your capability. So how do you actually start healing in this placement? There is a few starting points. So first, we're going to redefine failure. I mean, try treating mistakes as data, not verdicts on your character. Easier said than done, I know that. But even noticing the instinct to catastrophize a small mistake is progress. Second, you're going to practice receiving help. I mean, this placement often struggles to ask for support. So start small, let someone carry something for you, like literally or figuratively, and notice the discomfort without acting on it. Third, you're going to separate rest from worth. Schedule downtime, the same way you'd schedule a work deadline, because for this placement, rest often needs to be treated as a discipline, not as an afterthought. And finally, look for where Saturn sits in your chart too, because since Capricorn's ruling planet often works closely alongside Chiron here, and understanding your Saturn placement can add another layer of insight into how you build authority and structure in your life. So it's pretty important to kind of look at that and see where you stand. So Chiron in Capricorn isn't a life sentence of pressure and perfectionism. It's an invitation to redefine what strength and success actually mean to you. I mean, the wound doesn't disappear, but it does stop running the show. And if this resonated with you, let me know in the comments what house your Chiron falls in, because that adds even more nuances to how this shows up in your life. And if you want more placement breakdowns like this one, make sure to subscribe, because next week we're covering Chiron in Aquarius, or I might do it later today, I'm not sure. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.